And I heard her say, I'm going to paraphrase, but this is what I learned that I thought I was committed. How many of us think we're committed to something?
Mm-hmm.
And what I learned is there's a big difference between being committed and being convicted, right? People decommit every day, don't they? They say, I'm committed to this marriage for life until the day I'm not. She says, but when you're convicted, you will not rest until you get it done. And you understand that your comfort and your convenience and your conviction don't live on the same block. They're not even in the same zip code.
Mm-hmm.
Folks, we get to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. So I dropped those 3 services and I became all in. And that was, January of 2018 is when I became all in.
Hello, Empower Nation. Welcome to Empower Her Money podcast. I am your host, Angela Duncan, speaker, best-selling author, serial entrepreneur, and we talk all things money and business. Today's episode is sponsored by freemoneytipsbook.com. freemoneytipsbook.com. Head over there, download your free ebook, 7 Unshakable Steps to Get You Started on your financial journey. On today's episode, I get to interview Carol Boston. She's going to talk about the difference between confidence and committed and why you are failing as a leader. Hi, Carol. Welcome to Empower Her Money podcast. How are you today?
I am excellent today. We
Yeah.
couldn't have possibly had better weather in South Florida for this last week. I have loved it.
I know. I bring out my sweaters. I'm so excited. All right. So why don't you tell the audience a little bit about you and your backstory?
Okay. So going all the way back really quick, I was raised in a very competitive household between 2 brothers. I learned how to play baseball, football, tackle football, and basketball before I was 5. And my dad threw me on a ball team when I was 5, and they kicked me off because they said I was too little. So at the age of 7, he threw me back on. And the story goes from my dad, who is 92, that within a month I was team captain. And I only tell you that because I'm a leadership empowerment and sales coach. And I didn't realize until last year when I went through a very intensive leadership program myself that I learned how early I was involved in leadership.
Hmm.
And one of the things I've also learned, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, is that I've always been an individual contributor who's part of a team.
Hmm.
That comes up really big for me in growing a business, right?
Right.
So I was very blessed. I went to LSU on a tennis scholarship, and I had only been playing tennis since I was 15. Why is that important for the audience to hear? Is
Wow.
because I trusted in someone else's vision for me until I could believe it for myself. It's
Hmm.
happened 3 times in my life. It's how I got a tennis scholarship. When that same dad, when I was a junior in high school, my dad said to me, now, Carol, you need to get a job or you need to get an academic scholarship. I can't send you to college. And I looked at him, I go, but dad, I'm going to get a tennis scholarship. There was a long silence. And he looked down his nose at me again. He goes, like I said, get a job. So, right, even the people closest to us sometimes don't believe in us,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it's not about us. It's about their fears or whatever. And there was a gentleman, though, who coached the team who believed that I could do it. So I got 3 full rides. I didn't take any of those because I wanted to go be an LSU fighting tiger. My doubles partner was going to LSU, and everybody that I ever got to practice or play with had all been playing since they were 5. That's important because in business, you get to look at who you're surrounding yourself with.
Hmm.
And when I first started, it was because I was on the swim team and I noticed that my peers would go down and play tennis. And my dad had asked me to play one time when I was 13, and I didn't know what it was. So I said, well, what's tennis? He goes, it's a lot like baseball. You can do it. So we tried for about 30 minutes. And I went up and I put the racket down, Angela, at the edge of the net. And I looked at my dad and I said, don't you ever ask me to do this again. You brought me out here to embarrass me.
Mm.
But 2 years later, it was that competitiveness, right? If they can do it, I can do it. And we didn't have money. So people get to think about bootstrapping their business. What can you do?
Mhm.
Because you can always do something. So I got this little old wooden John McEnroe Dunlop racket. And I knew that my brain was a sponge. So I would go sit down on the edge of the court and I would listen to the pro teach the other kids who were paying him, right?
Mm.
And then I would go get those kids to play with me because I thought, if they will play with me and they're so much better, I can't help but get better.
Mhm.
And that's what I did. And so I got this half ride to LSU. So I took out a student loan and off I went. Now, in high school, when I actually made the team, I played number six. And that's great because only the top six get to play singles. When I get to college, I played number six, but I was playing with people a lot better than me.
Mm.
And at the end of my first year, the rest of the team took the summer off. And this is back in the day. They don't have this amateur tour anymore, but it was called the 21 and under tour. And it was the last tour, if you will, before you tried to get on the pro circuit. So it was also back in the day when it was safe enough to hitch rides. You could never do this today, right? Because I didn't have a car and didn't have a lot of money. So this guy, Steve, and I, he was on the LSU men's team. We hitched rides and got on this tour to
Oh my
work on our
goodness.
games. But as long as you stayed in the top 16 seeds, you got free housing. So that was our goal. So every day we got up, we set our intention. We just want to keep a roof over our head, right? We're going to play and learn. So I come back to tryouts in August, all the same girls, I call them girls, young ladies, on the team, and one new freshman, and we had tryouts. And I went from playing number six to playing number two. And then I went at the end of that semester from playing number two to number one and went on for 3 years to play number one and be the team captain. And one of the lessons I attached to that, especially for business owners, is that sometimes we get to practice when everybody else is resting.
Mm.
And that's what I did that summer, right? Doesn't mean you never take a vacation, right?
Yeah.
And so I got married, went through a divorce. I played on the pro tour, had a lot of injuries, gave up on tennis, had custom made rackets, sold them to some little old ladies. How many of you have ever, right, been bitter? I didn't realize that I was just bitter
Mm.
because I was always getting injured. And I was the girl on the tennis tour who didn't do drugs, didn't go party, ate healthy, went to bed, practiced, couldn't figure it out. So, long story short, my car caught on fire and the insurance company wouldn't pay for it. What do you think I did? I called my dad again. My dad had been in the insurance business for 30 years. He says to me now, Carol, I ain't in that kind of insurance. But if you come home, I know somebody to help you get a brand new car, even if you don't have a job. I thought, because I had quit. I was a tennis teaching professional at the Baton Rouge Country Club, and I knew I didn't want to do that my whole life. How
Mm.
many of your audience are like, but I don't really know what I want to do? That's where
Mhm.
I was. My
Mhm.
background degree was in criminal law. Um, Ended up not going to law school. So I go up to Shreveport, Louisiana, and I get a car. And I go over to Dallas, Texas, and I was living with my second cousin. She was head of personnel for Neiman Marcus, so she taught me how to wear the navy suit and buy the pearls and the heels. I mean, you saw me when I spoke at NABA. I don't dress like that anymore.
No.
Not me, but I did it. And it was in 1987 when the U.S. government had just broken up the monopoly of AT&T and all the baby bells.
Mhm.
Competition was fierce, right? So I
Mhm.
got hired in Dallas by a company called Metra Media Communications. They were owned by John Kluge. They were new in the market. I don't know if you remember him. He may not be old enough, but he owned the Ice Capades. He owned the Harlem Globetrotters,
Mhm.
and he had like 47 radio stations. So the
Mm.
lady who hires me says, can you come in tomorrow and meet my boss, the vice president? So I said, sure. Get all dressed up again. I go in and she interviews me and she sits back in her chair and she looks at me and she says, great. I'll see you in Miami in a week. And I said, no, you won't. Now, I needed a job, but I said, my friends from the tennis tour are in Dallas. You have an office in Dallas. I'm interviewing in Dallas, and my family's only 3.5 hours away. I'm working in Dallas. Now, maybe she thought that was kind of ballsy for somebody who needed a job. I don't know. Right? So she just calmly looked at me again. And she said, I need somebody really strong in Miami. You
Mm.
know, and I pushed back again. I'm like, how do you know I'm strong? I've never done this before. And here's what she said: just trust me and be there in a week.
Mm.
And so I did. So now it's the second time I trusted somebody else's vision for me until I
Mhm.
could believe it. And it turned into a 26-year, very successful sales career for Fortune 100 companies, ATT
Wow.
scores and paychecks.
Wow. That's incredible.
And then through a series of events, um, I lost my job. I don't know if you have another minute or so for that story, but
Yeah, absolutely.
it's powerful. It was in the summer of 2013, 2014. And in 2013, I'd been in a bad car wreck. So I had missed quite a bit of work that the year, and I still made a comeback. And my boss said, "You're going to end up at 95% of quota. This is awesome." I said, "This is terrible. I've never not made quota. I'm always at circle and ice and whatever." And she looked at me and she goes, "Do you realize how much work you missed from that car wreck?" Right? We never give ourselves enough credit. And as
Mhm.
women, we don't do what? We don't celebrate or pat ourselves on the back. Good
Mhm.
lesson for me to learn. So that couple of months later, I get a phone call from her. I loved my boss, but it was from her boss, and he didn't like strong women. And he says, "I wanted to let you know we're cutting your territory by 80%."
Mm.
And I said, 80%? I've been building this territory for 6.5 years. Now, I didn't know if they were setting me up to fail, but I really didn't want to leave. I loved large corporate structure. I was a weird salesperson, but I love large corporate structure and I was a rule follower. Not true for most corporate salespeople. I was
Mhm.
in a toxic relationship and she kept pushing me and pushing me. "They're just using you. They're setting you up to fail. Go get another job." So a friend of mine whispered in my ear about an opportunity at this really small up and coming company. Now I like large corporate structure, but I thought, I don't know what I don't know. And off I went on the interview.
Mhm.
2 interviews. They offered me the job. They doubled my base salary plus commissions, and they gave me my first title, my first director title, right? I could just see the potential. There I was 6 weeks into the job, and I was on vacation. I had negotiated that in my contract. We'd already paid for vacation, doing what I thought at the time. What does Maya Angelou tell us? When you learn better, you do better. I didn't know this at the time, but I thought the right thing to do in this new job was to stay in touch with my boss, the CEO, while I was on vacation. So I get an email one day asking my opinion on something. And I replied right back. And I waited and I waited because he usually replies right back. We went out and enjoyed our day. If you've never been to the world's largest hot air balloon festival in Albuquerque, New Mexico, put it on your bucket list.
Mm.
Gorgeous.
Mm.
So we come in that evening and ding, there goes my phone. "Carol Boston, you've got mail." I will never forget what it said. "Carol, comma, that's what you really think?" And it had 5 question marks behind it. Then it said,
Ooh.
do not come into this office on Monday. When your vacation is over, you are done here."
Ooh.
And I looked at my girlfriend and I said, "Did I just get fired?
Mm.
I don't get fired." Like, WTH, right? So Florida is an at-will state.
Mhm.
Never having been in this position, my thought process was, well, I guess I can get fired for anything. So one of the things I help my female clients do now, and my few good male clients, is advocate for themselves because I didn't do it back in 2014.
Mm.
I just accepted.
Mhm.
But I came back to Florida and I had an interview the very next day. And I was interviewed all over this country. Some companies flew me cross country 3 and 4 times.
Wow.
Crickets.
Hmm.
I spent my entire 401k. Think about it. Looking for a job. What would compel me to do that? I think you may have heard me say that my next book is going to be called "You Can't Read the Label When You're Inside the Jar."
Ah, that's good.
And we're all in a jar. I was stuck in my jar. All I could see is that I was a buttoned up corporate sales professional, had to have a job.
Mhm.
Now, faith is my foundation. So that's where I go. So basically, many, many, many months into this process, I have no idea how many resumes I sent out. I had a great career, right? I'm
With no
basically yelling,
offers.
yes, no offers, not a
Wow.
one.
Wow.
Not in the same industries, not in different industries. My skill set could translate. Um, it was incredible. So there I was in my prayer time. I was basically yelling at God, to be honest. I was like, "Look, you created me. You know I'm not cut out to be an entrepreneur. I do not want to own my own business. Could you please help me find a good job?" And literally 2 weeks to the day from that prayer, out of the blue, I get an email from a woman. I'm at one time out of town at a conference. She and I maybe chatted for 30 minutes. Guess what she did?
Hmm.
She gifted me a $3,500 ticket to go to Los Angeles to go to Guerrilla Business School, which was a foundational school to learn about entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, my God has a sense of humor too, right? And once again, I don't know what I don't know, and off I went. The first thing I learned is what's going to be the title of my next book, right? Can't read the label when you're inside the jar. And the second thing I learned was about empowering questions. I was amazed at them and I was determined to master them. And I've been working for the last 9 years to master them. Online, I'm known as the Queen of Reframe, and I do teach and train on empowering questions, how to get the answers that you really want. And I continue to study leadership. John Maxwell, Lisa Nichols, Michael Strasner, who's the pioneer of leadership. Guess what I was doing? Still stuck in my jar. This is May of 2015.
Mm.
Fast forward. How many of you have ever just been stuck and couldn't see it?
Mm-hmm.
The fall of 2017, 2.5 years later, I'm still holding on to 3 services that I'm trying to sell through HR into large corporations. Why? I'm a sales professional. And then I heard something that was very impacting to me. It was in the late fall of 2017. Lisa Nichols, I give her credit. She's an amazing, if you don't know who she is, she's amazing. And I heard her say, I'm going to paraphrase, but this is what I learned, that I thought I was committed. How many of us think we're committed to something?
Mm-hmm.
And what I learned is there's a big difference between being committed and being convicted, right? People decommit every day, don't they? They say, I'm committed to this marriage for life until the day I'm not. She says, but when you're convicted, you will not rest until you get it done. And you understand that your comfort and your convenience and your conviction don't live on the same block. They're not even in the same zip code.
Mm-hmm.
Folks, we get to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. So I dropped those 3 services and I became all in. And that was, January of 2018 is when I became all in to be a coach.
Mm.
That's kind of what got me into my own business, trusting other people's visions, resiliency, never giving up. Um, Even my therapist today would tell you I'm resilient because I've been through some turmoils. And I tell people, don't judge my book by the chapter you walked in on. You don't know my whole story.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there were times when people thought my business was successful a few years ago. I was sleeping on an air mattress on a floor,
Mm.
10 feet away from a kitchen that had rat running around in it,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
But I got up every day and nobody knew. Nobody
Yeah.
knew.
Yeah.
Is that good? Is it right or wrong? It's neither one, because we do get to ask for help, something that I got a chance to learn. And I don't know if you're catching on to my languaging. I'm really help my clients with effective communication and languaging. I didn't say I had to or I need to. I said I get to.
Yeah. You
Can,
taught
can,
me that. And that's something that
yes.
I've changed as well. I'm like, when I talk about in my videos, I get to do this. I get to interview Carol today. So that's part of my introduction. Just changing
Mm,
that language really makes me feel like I'm just great. I have gratitude because I get to do this. And one of the things that from your stories, the word that kept popping in my head was curiosity. As you moved from place to place and decision to decision, it was as if your brain was curious on what's on that other side and taking that leap of faith. So having that curiosity as a base, I think is also a great driver as well.
absolutely. And, it's interesting. One of the things that empowering questions do for you is they allow you to come from a place of curiosity instead of judgment.
Mhm.
And that helps you open a lot of doors. And, I said this recently on some other opportunity, and the people just looked at me and I said, one of the things that I got to learn was that everything I wanted was on the other side of the work that I wasn't willing to do.
Mhm.
Like I didn't want to learn how to create in MailChimp. I didn't want to have to learn automation. Can't I just pay somebody to do that? Well, if you don't know how to do it, you're not going to know if they're doing it right for you.
Right.
Ah, but I trusted someone, a VA. I hired a VA. Here's a good lesson. Hired a VA, and I had been sending out, I had one VA who decided not to be a VA anymore. And that's the only reason I changed VAs. But I was writing the content and she was putting it out there. MailChimp, everything was going good. Had about 1,000 people almost on my email list. Everything's going fine. So she quit. So I hired this other VA. Now, this other VA got me to change platforms because she was supposedly a guru in a platform called Keep. We were going to put everything in Keep. She had 6 other clients that she was doing their business in Keep.
Hmm.
So in February of that year, we moved to Keep, and I'm sending content every day. Excuse me, 3 times a week, I sent content. And I decided to do my first master class in the summer in July. And I wasn't getting any signups. It was weird. The signups that I got were more from Facebook and not the email list. And finally, someone reached out to me on Facebook the day of the master class and said, "How come I didn't know about this?" I said, "I don't know. I've been putting it in email."
Mm.
You know what she said to me? "I haven't gotten an email from you since February."
Wow.
Lesson learned, because I didn't know enough to ensure that she was doing her job in the right
Mm-hmm.
way.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, curiosity's it's powerful. Yeah, and it also keeps you in a humble place because we get to say, "I don't know what I don't know. What else is on the other side of this?"
Yeah.
Or what if, right? What one thing could happen if I were to? And then you get to put in, what it is that you want to do.
Yeah. So one of the things that you talked about when I had the opportunity to see you speak, which was definitely empowering for me. I took lots of notes that day. But one of the things that kind of stood out was you taught about, I think it was 3 different leadership styles and how, I feel like as a business owner, if you're not leading the company in a manner in which is transformative for them, right? Um,
Yes.
it's hard for you to grow that company. So can you talk about a little bit of those different styles and, obviously the good and the bad behind each of them?
Sure. So the first leadership style is there's the motivational leader, right? They come in, they get you all excited. We're in their room and everybody's excited and everybody's in the vision, and they leave the room and all the energy goes out of the room with
Mhm.
the leader. And so the good side of that is everybody got excited. Endorphins are going everywhere. There's a lot of adrenaline. The bad side of that is there's no forward progress and there's no leadership amongst the team when the leader is out of the room,
Mhm.
right? The job of a good leader to what? Raise up other leaders. You want to raise up other leaders, regardless of title. And I think that's important. I may have said it in that talk that night. I don't believe you have to have a title to be a leader. Look at me. I thought I was so excited I had my first director title. And what did that turn into? A nightmare, right? Right? I believe in top down, bottom up leadership. You can be a leader at all levels. And I think it's really critical. The second level of leadership is the inspirational leader. Now, they have all the good of the motivational leader. They come in and everybody gets excited, but they have a higher skill set and they're able to inspire that team to continue doing the work once they leave the room.
Mm.
The challenge is that team is committed, but not convicted. So
Mm.
they will do the work maybe for 2 or 3 days, if you're lucky, 2 or 3 weeks, and then it falls flat again. But the level that you really want to get to is being the transformational leader, right?
Mm.
Raising up other leaders. A transformational leader has the best of the motivational, the best of the inspirational, but they have the tools and the skill set to do what? Get everybody not only to buy into the vision, but be convicted to the vision so that they do the work until the job is done,
Mhm.
right? And I don't know, we may have also talked about the 4 levels of responsibility.
Yeah.
And, when you're operating at transformational leadership, you're doing your best most of the time. Nobody's perfect. To be at level 4 leadership. I am 100% responsible
Mm. Yeah.
for everything, for
Yeah.
everything. When I first heard that, let me tell you, I was so mad. I'm like, that is not true. I did not go out and create my car to have I was having a massive car problem. And I had 2 or 3 other weird things going on. I said, what would have compelled me to create this?
Mhm.
But when I stayed in that resistance, there was no movement forward and there's no growth. But if I accept that I'm 100% responsible for everything, then I know that I have the power to make change.
Yeah.
Right. And so anytime, and we've all been guilty. Okay. Level 1 leadership is what? It's not my fault.
Mm-hmm.
I have no control. Everything happens to me. I'm a victim. Big difference between victim and level 4.
Right.
Right. But even when you're at level 4, then you get the opportunity to say, when you say I'm responsible, and you don't blame anything outside of you, not the weather, not the job, not the COVID, not the husband, not the kids. Now you're standing in your power to effect change. Because if it's someone over there, you can't change them, nor can you make them do anything
Mm-hmm.
that they don't choose to do.
Mm-hmm.
But owning our choices sometimes is hard. I will tell you. Like, damn, I made that choice, right? Oh, so a lot of self forgiveness rolls into play along the way in
Yeah, but I think
entrepreneurship.
that's why the saying they say, if you really truly want to change a company, you fire the leader, because the leader should know all aspects of the business enough to make changes or create, better environment or whatever it is that that company needs. You fire the leader.
Yes,
Mm.
and I just said to someone the other day, I don't know if you want me to tell the fresh market story, but I said to another worker there the other day, she was off the charts upset with this assistant manager. She was quitting, and she can't afford to quit. Financially, she and her husband retired a little too early, and so she can't afford to quit, even though it's a part-time job, right? So I talked her down off the wall, and I said, you don't ever leave a job because of the boss. The boss is going to change,
Hmm.
right? You get to work on changing you, because if you leave and you haven't changed, you're going to take your same attitudes, beliefs into the next position, and you'll get triggered by the same thing. Triggers are super important. We all
Yeah,
get triggered, right?
I do
We,
for sure.
but I help my clients reframe that. I had one client, she recently moved she was my past VA and a client, and she moved from New York City to Fort Lauderdale. And one of the things she told me is, if she had not worked with me, would never be where she is today. She is so excited about this opportunity. But one of the things she learned as a client faster than any other client I had was, I teach a process about how to take that trigger, reframe it, get clear on what's going on in you that gets to be healed, because that's what that trigger is about. You get
Hmm.
to do inner work, healing work,
Hmm.
right? And oh my gosh, I taught, how you breathe, what you do. You go into gratitude first, and then this is how you do it. She adopted that so quickly, and she said it's been one of the most powerful things for change in her life.
Amazing. Awesome. So I've got a fun question for you, completely off topic.
Good.
If you had a superpower or super talent, what would it be and why?
I just talked about, we can't get anybody to do anything they don't want to do. My superpower, if I had it, would be to get people to take action immediately without judgment.
Hmm.
Immediately. Because indecision costs us way more than a poor decision,
Mhm.
right? Because a poor decision at least gets us into action. If we get into action, we have some results. And when we have results, we have something that we can measure. Once we can measure, we can do what? We can manage. But
Mm.
with no results, there's nothing to manage. And so I had a client back in 2018, female family lawyer. And I'm sure each coach has their own secret sauce. I have what I call my secret sauce. And I don't even tell my clients what it is. I just try to get them to do it in conjunction with these other tools that I give them.
Mm.
This client September said, I'm not doing that, Carol. Okay. We kept working. October, she says, I'm not doing that. Okay. We kept working. November, no, I'm not doing that. Finally, the week after Thanksgiving, and I had an office back then, she sat across the table from me. She rolled her eyes at me, shrugged her shoulders, and said, okay, Carol, I'll
Mm.
do it. I said, will you do it consistently? She said, yes. This is the week after Thanksgiving. And she'll attest to this. She's done videos on this. She tells everybody. January through May of the following year, we tripled her income every month, month over the year before.
Wow.
But she stayed in resistance for almost 4 months.
Yeah. The opportunity
So
cost.
yes, the opportunity. What is it causing us to not get into action? What is it costing you to not invest in a coach? I hear that often from people who, well, I know if I had my MBA, Carol, if I just had my MBA, I could move up in this company. I could do this and I could do that. And I just ask them, What's keeping you from having an MBA? You notice I didn't ask why.
Mhm.
What's keeping you from getting your MBA? Invariably, they say, what? Costs too much money. I said, that MBA doesn't cost you anything. I said, that MBA is an investment in your breathtaking future. What it's costing you, you get to look at what it's costing you to not have it. That's the cost to not have it.
Yeah. Awesome. Carol, thank you so much for the information. Lots and lots of great information. I really appreciate your time today. If our audience wants to get in touch with you, learn more about what you're doing, hire you to help transform their lives, how do they reach you?
They can email me at carol@carolboston.com. All of my social media is the @ at THE at the Carol Boston. That'll get you to Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. I'm mainly LinkedIn and Facegram person. I mean, I've got an Instagram, but I said Facegram, Facebook, Instagram. I got an Instagram page. I'm not there a lot. I'm in the process of changing platforms, so my website is in limbo right now, so you can't really go to a website yet. DM me at any of those places. Just reach out. I've got some special things going on. I had a very good friend of mine, a little over a month ago, suddenly passed away at the age of 50,
Hmm.
and I was profoundly sad. She was doing so much good in the world, running a nonprofit. And there's a song that I hear. It's on a Christian radio station on XM radio, and the words have been playing over and over to me for months. And when she passed away, I thought of her because it said, "What if we could be the light that no one could ignore?" And
Hmm.
that's who she was. So a
Hmm.
friend of mine challenged me, "What 5 things could you do to honor Tracy?" And one of the things that I've chosen is I'm picking 5 women, and we're not going to look at what the normal investment is to work with me. We're going to meet them where they're at. There's going to be an investment because you get to have skin in the game.
Right.
But if ever there was a time to get in and work with me, now's the time.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. Really
Thank
appreciate
you for
that.
having me. I'd love to do
Yeah.
this again.
Sounds good. Awesome, Carol. Thank you so much again for being on Empower Her Money podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning into Empower Her Money podcast. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to subscribe, share this podcast, and leave a review wherever you are tuning in.